Hi, coaches. Today I want to take you through a process known as the fast phobia model. Now, this particular process is through practitioner training, and it is phenomenal at helping somebody neutralize, clear, and resolve a phobia. It's not the process you would use for a fear. That's what timeline is for. But when it comes to a phobic response, that irrational fear response to a specific stimulus, that's what the fast phobia is for. I've often heard Richard Bandler talk about this in some of his content about how he came up with this process. He often jokes and says that the fast phobia model is something that created him a lot of money, especially after the Jaws movie came out. People would go into the cinema, scare themselves so much so that they wouldn't even want to have a bath. That movie was so intense, and that he would use this process to help people resolve a phobia. Now, we know Richard Bandler has a wicked sense of humour, and I know that he would have used this process on a variety of different phobias. This one is definitely something that you want to add to your NLP toolkit. So let's get started. One of the key points in resolving a phobia, if you're working with a client, is to actually recognize their strategy for safety, not just their strategy for their phobia that they're experiencing. So anything that you can do to anchor in that sense of safety, whether you do a process beforehand, holding a crystal, holding a lucky coin, holding something that anchors safety, will go a long way in helping this process be that much more effective. My question to the classroom is, do you have a phobia? Because as we go through this process, if you do, you may want to hit pause or you may want to start watching, because there's definitely going to be some pictures and things that highlight different phobias you can resolve. Now, the difference between a phobia and a fear, a phobia is a very tightly wound neural network. So it creates and generates an intense irrational fear, and it's triggered by something specific. Something specific. It's not just a general fear. You can get on with your life. The phobia will stop you in your tracks. And it's the type of fear where you have an inability to even talk about it because their fight flight response is so instinctive compared to a fear. And a fear is an emotional response. If you can talk about your fears, it's not a phobia. Now, we're only born with two fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. This is that startle reflex. So, any other fear that we've learned, we can assume that we've learned it quickly and therefore we can unlearn it quickly, which is exactly why we do the fast phobia model. We don't need to sit in the psychologist's office week after week, month after month to try to resolve a phobia. And in fact, we could do this within one session or two with the follow up sessions to make sure there's strategies for success afterwards. So I've used this process on a phobia of dentists, magpies, public speaking, heights, claustrophobia, you name it. With spiders, snakes, you can use this process. So we know that a phobia will drain your energy, and it drains your logical thinking, it drains your emotional thinking, it drains your intuitive energy, and the phobia can become stronger and stronger over time. So the sooner that you can get onto it, sooner the better. Now, it's important to recognize as NLP practitioners that the trigger itself, whether it's the magpie or it's the mouse, the trigger isn't the problem. The interpretation of that thing is actually the problem. So the way that we delete, distort, and generalize, we know that something may have happened in the past. They've attached some level of meaning of threat to that thing, to the spider. And now, anytime that there's even a spider on a cartoon or in a book, and it's sort of like, get me away. So we know that the spider is just the thing that is the trigger. But the spider itself or the magpie, it's actually not the problem. So the past is done, but the interpretation of that trigger continues to live within that client's life, and it continues to create that internal representation, holding on to that phobic response. Now, I loved researching this. How is a phobia created? Well, if we go back and have a look at how our brains work, very, very simply, very generally, we know that the brain loves stimulation. It loves novelty, it loves reward. So thinking about a little one who's playing with a toy, it makes a noise, or parents come and tickle, or their sisters come in and tickle their toes. There's going to be that novelty there, a spike of dopamine of that pleasure. And the brain will say to itself, I liked this. I want to remember how I did this to get more of this really good sense of reward. And so the brain will quickly learn to create a shortcut to reproduce that physical movement to be able to get that neurological reward. So it's already mapped out, what did I do to be able to get that reward? And so it's going to create that repetition, and that repetition is going to create a shortcut to be able to ensure that reward, that dopamine, the novelty, the stimulus, the entertainment. And of course, your brain in this reality is driven to explore more ways to get more of that stimulation. And that quirky little one there is my daughter Madison, 14 years ago. So, how are we exploring our world? Well, as NLP practitioners, we know that we're exploring our world through the five senses. What do things look like? What do they feel like? What do they sound like? What do they taste like? What do they smell like? And we just generate this sense of exploration to be able to get that reward until we get an unexpected surprise of pain or shock. Who knows? Maybe you were actually, swooped at by a magpie. Who knows if you if yeah, you were in a car accident and now there's that shock of like a phobic response of even getting in a car. But there's going to now be that spike of adrenaline and the cortisol and the stress. So we're at the opposite end of the spectrum. So instead of it being this moving towards pleasure, we now have a neural pathway that is moving away from pain. And the brain itself is going to say, I need to remember how I did this to be able to avoid it. It's in that moment that phobia starts to generate. Now, think about it. Phobias don't have to be about your personal experience. Let's say that you're 12 months old, little cute little one, and your mum has a phobia of cats. Now, in that story, let's say that she takes you to a friend's house, you're sat on the floor to play with your toys, and then the friend's cat sneaks into the room and gently comes near you. Now, as that phobic response, your mum is going to generate that panic in herself from triggers from years ago. Get that cat away, quick, move, get that baby off the floor, get it away from the cat. And in that moment, you've mirrored your mum, you've almost like taken a gasp, and it suddenly the brain in a nanosecond says, what did I see? What did I feel? What did I hear? What did I taste? What did I smell? What was it that created that phobia or that shock or that stress or the adrenaline? So that high alert, that sound, the sight of the cat will now encode itself as an internal representation, and that the brain is going to store that now as a phobia. It's done, it's wired now. So it's not even how you had a phobic or a scare for the cat because it bit you. It was just on its way, saying hello and moving away. But even our parents' phobias, or my husband and his twin brother in a car accident once, my husband was fine, and then looking over at his twin brother, who was in a complete sense of panic as the car was spinning, and he's gone, "Oh my gosh, I need to be aware. Like this isn't fun anymore. Like there's something scary." And so automatically generating a phobic response. And of course, he used this process to resolve that. But the phobias don't have to be your specific experience. The next one that comes to mind is even like the little one at the beach with the water. You might have a phobia of water, and just your mum or your dad seeing like this big wave and they have a gasp, oh my gosh, are you okay? And it's automatically what there was a threat there that wasn't there before, and the brain holds on to it. So getting back on track, anytime that person sees a cat, they will experience an automatic phobic response. It will automatically be, get me away from this. The cat may be, again, in a book, on the TV, but the phobic response says, there's a threat now and I'm gone. This is when we can use the NLP fast phobia model to undo the neural pathways and undo the meaning within their mind. Some things to keep in mind with your NLP practitioner tools is remember some modalities. Remember how we dial down the intensity by shrinking things down, blinking it black and white, even pushing it away to create some distance. With the fast phobia model, we are definitely going to be utilizing the way that their brain encodes and distances themselves from stimulus that we want less of. And again, in your practitioner training, remember how a belief is generated. Something happens, that we have a response to it, and then, or we put meaning to it, I should say, and then the belief happens. So going up high, mum panics, there's that sense of fear. Now a belief of a fear is generated or a fear of heights. I went up high, mum took a gasp, or, my grandmother gasped, oh my God, the baby's up high. And the effect of that was this meaning of, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be up here, I'm not safe. And now a belief is created. So keeping all of this in mind when we start to go on that journey with the fast phobia, because we're going to undo the meaning to the cause. And yes, you can anchor safety at the beginning, and you can use timeline to resolve the fear or the limiting decision around the lack of safety or being out of control. But I wouldn't use timeline to go and resolve phobia of, like, can you imagine if you went along your time stream, see the event down there where there was the cat, drop down into that event, the client is now going to go into a phobic response and they're now associated in it, and you have lost them. They're not going to concentrate, hear you in any way, shape, or form. So the timeline process is great at looking for the lack of safety and the limiting decision, but it's not the process to do for the fast phobia model, but it is a tool that you can use on either side of it to access safety. And this process works exceptionally well for people with PTSD, so much so that therapists and counselors all over the world are taught this particular process, as it creates that accelerated and effective treatment to be able to improve the lives of people who've been in war scenarios. There's a bit of an example there that, yeah, even the Australian government uses this particular process for PTSD for veterans. Now, if you've been trained to work with people with trauma, this process works for people who have experienced things like being kidnapped, violence such as murder or assault, domestic violence, sexual abuse, road incidences, homelessness, traumatic births, and natural disasters. So expand your mind out and get creative when it comes to utilizing this process for things that are pretty heavy duty. If you've been taught to work with trauma, absolutely give this one a go with your clients with these particular scenarios. And a sidestep, because I love to do that. For those who have a fear of heights, here's a bit of Claire trivia for you. If you're the type of person who visualizes what you want to do and then acts upon it, then you are a highly motivated person. So think about the types. If you're visual, you're laying in bed, what am I going to do today? All right, there's my timeline. I'm being through time and I'm looking at all the things that I need to do. This type of visualization is going to be a disadvantage for you when it comes to phobias, because a byproduct of this strategy, by making pictures of yourself doing the thing that you need to do, means that when you're at the top of a building, you're going to very quickly make a picture of what it's like to fall off the building. And you'll have that sensory experience, the whole sort of dropping, tingly sensation, because you've actually trained yourself to be motivated to try things on visually before you do the thing. And I'm not saying that you're going to fall off a building, but curious visual people, yeah, often think, oh, what would that be like? And then they play it out in their minds. But try it the other way. Next time you're planning on going to a roof, make a picture of yourself standing on the edge, feeling calm and comfortable. See yourself standing there at a safe distance, firm on the ground or firm on the top. And yeah, you'll notice that there's a different strategy in your mind that's, yeah, going to create calmness. So, before we go into detail about the fast phobia model, let's talk about a process you can do before that makes the fast phobia that much easier for your client. We know as NLP practitioners, we need to loosen somebody's model of the world. So they come to you with their present state, and they've probably even practiced it in their mind before the session even started. Okay, I'm going to have a session with Claire, and I've got that phobia of cats, and da 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 da, and their mind goes into hyperdrive. We now know what their present state is, but we now need to also loosen their model of the world to be able to unpack that at a deeper level to then be able to create the desired state. So, loosening their model of the world doesn't mean actually fixing the problem. It just means making the client's perception of the problem different. So it's easier for the client to move. So instead of it being a rigid problem, this is what it is, we can we can loosen their model of the world so that the problem's easier to let go of. One of the ways you can do that, one of the ways you can loosen their model of the world is to use strategy scrambler. Do you remember this one in your NLP practitioner training? The strategy scrambler is getting your client to teach you how to do the thing that they do, and they need to go over the steps. But as you, the coach, learn how they do their strategy, you muck it up a little bit, and you put in the statement there, teach me how to do this phobia because I don't want to forget. And so when they say that I see the spider and then I jump up and down, you then say, okay, so if I'm going to do this, first I need to see my I need to see my car in the driveway. I look over here to the spider and then I sit down. Is that how I do it? Teach me because I don't want to forget. And the client will naturally go, hold on, no, that's not what I said. I said hold on, I said you see the thing and then you jump up and it's like, okay, so teach me this because I don't want to forget. You know, what stops me from being able to not look at the spider and, you know, look up to the sky? And so you start to you start to scramble their strategy. How do you think the spider would feel if I screamed at it so loudly? Like, have you ever thought about the spider's point of view? You know, and just bring up absolute nonsense, and it will start to loosen their model of the world. It'll start to scramble the strategy of the phobia. When you have rapport, one of the best signs that the client is ready to make a change is the willingness to actually laugh at how ridiculous their problems have been. We don't want to get into the state of how serious this problem is. Even things like domestic violence and traumatic birth, yes, there will be some level of empathy, but at the same time, it's like, oh my gosh, like, you making your life like this thing that happened ages ago? Like, just imagine the freedom that you'll have when you're free of that old limitation. And if you can get the client to start to be a little bit more playful with how ridiculous the tight grip the problem has been, then you are definitely on your way to making a shift. And it's still about having respect, it's still about being professional, but at the same time, as humans, it's like, oh my gosh, why are we making things so much harder for ourselves? Okay, so with all of that pre-frame, all of the steps involved, let's actually have a look at the fast phobia model. We can change the phobia strategy at an unconscious level so the client can take control of their life. So if the client is in front of you, you can even get playful and hand them a remote. I mean, this is my air conditioning remote, doesn't have to be the TV remote, but even just giving them the sense of like, you're in control and we're going to rewind this and we're going to stop it in its tracks. With the fast phobia model, we're going to use the metaphor of a cinema or the pictures so that they can separate themselves from the experience. And I'll go into that a little bit more. We need to change the emotion and the structure of how the unconscious mind has recorded that event. And we need to get them out of the movie of their mind so it is separate to them and on the movie screen. The cinema creates further distance from the event by double disassociating. So, what we're going to do is we're going to invite the client to come into the cinema of their mind, to take a seat, and to notice that the movie of their problem is about to play. But what we're also going to do is split ourselves even more. So, the complete opposite of parts integration. There's going to be a part of you sitting in the seat about to watch the movie, and we're going to put you, your higher self, in the projector room. So you're all the way back there, completely in control, seeing yourself see the movie. You got that? It's okay, I'll go over it again. So, taking you back to your practitioner training, remember that associated means you're looking through your own eyes. So, if you were to associate into a good thing, that early morning cup of coffee or you having the pancakes and just dropping into the body to see what you saw, hear what you heard, feel what you felt, this is the invitation to associate. But we're not doing that with the phobia model. We're going to disassociate. So it's going to be able to separate yourself to see yourself in the cinema. And because we can, let's just make it that much more detailed. In NLP, we're going to double disassociate. So we are going to put the movie of the problem on the screen. There's going to be a version of you in the seat and then another version of you in the projector room. So if your perceptual projection is up there in the projector room, then you can see multiple versions of yourself playing out. And for anybody else that needs that bird's eye view, this is what it's going to look like. My grandfather was an architect, so I'm very familiar with looking at floor plans and allowing the mind to see the house from the the 2D image looking down. So if you're somebody who likes floor plans and likes to see the map, this is what it looks like. There's going to be a version of you on the screen, a version of you sitting in the seat, and another version of you in the projector room. And so we're going to play out that movie of the problem. And like an old VHS tape, we're going to play that movie of the phobia over and over and over again until it actually weakens. We're going to rewind and fast forward over and over and over until that movie becomes a blur and neural pathways kind of like break the VHS tape. Pretty cool. And then from there, there's going to be that sense of freedom. It's like, oh, can't actually access that old story because it's now been scrambled. It's a photo of me on my wedding day. So the client will still remember the event. The emotional intensity won't be there. There's going to be that sense of nothingness as a response to the stimulus. Yet they're going to consciously expect their body to react. So it's a very strange experience if you've been through this, where you're used to the sense of seeing the stimulation, this panic, this adrenaline, this stress, and then you get through the other end of this process and like, oh, it's a cat. Oh, it's a spider. Oh, it's a snake. Like, okay. And it can be such a strange, absent, silly feeling when somebody's done this process correctly. So, you ready to go into the cinema or into the pictures? One more thing there. Set the frame that you learnt this quickly and therefore you can unlearn it very quickly. You want to calibrate with the client on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst. How much of a problem is it for you when you see a spider, a cat, whatever it is, a bee, a bat, a dentist? So calibrate. Now that you've got that in place, you can use your NLP skills to be able to anchor safety into a crystal or anchor into a lucky coin or anchor into whatever, jewelry, whatever. You can definitely establish a safety resource into something so that that can go in their pocket and they can carry that safety with them wherever they go. It's time to play with the cinema of their mind. And my type of script, it would be to say something like, feel welcomed going into a safe cinema where you will get to learn something new and inspirational about yourself. Notice a version of you sitting in the middle row, looking at the screen. And while there is that version of you in the cinema, just want you to take yourself up to the projector room, far away from the screen, and staying up in that projector room. I want you to notice that you can see yourself sitting in the cinema and see that black and white screen of you on the screen. The movie is going to play featuring yourself in one of those bad times when you used to respond to that thing. Know your movie has a beginning and an end, and we're just going to watch that movie in black and white just to the end or just past the end. And then what we're going to do is we're going to rewind it so it plays backwards. So you're going to see yourself walking backwards, talking backwards. And this rewind only takes a few seconds. It's like, and we're going to speed up the movie faster and faster each time. So get them into the movie, or get them, sorry, noticing that there's that version. Start again. Noticing that we've got that movie about to play, and we're just going to see that movie play forwards and backwards, forwards and backwards, forwards and backwards, getting faster and faster each time. And now, when you use that sensory acuity, you can see your client sort of like, okay, I've been exposed to this now. It's getting less of a threat. You invite the client to come out of the projector room and sit in the middle row, feet on the floor. And again, we're going to watch that movie from the beginning to the end, and you'll just notice a change. When that movie has played out forwards and backwards, watching yourself moving forward and back, forward and back. So it's like saying to the client, okay, so notice the movie's playing. There you are at the beginning of the scene. You're seeing the spider, just seeing that movie, just really fast forwarding it, getting all the way to the end, and just notice that the strategy, the phobia has an end point when you're back at safety. And now hitting rewind, I want you to notice as we go back in time, hitting rewind, going back, 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 seeing yourself moving back, seeing yourself back, and then back to where you were safe. And then fast forwarding again, going through the movie, seeing the spider, noticing that there's a crazy reaction, and then moving forward and getting to that sense of safety. Going backwards in time, moving backwards, talking backwards, back to safety, and then fast forwarding again, moving it forward. There's that thing that we don't know, and then we get back to the safety and backwards in. So you're going to do this particular script quite quickly, 10 or so times, depending on what feels right for you. And then the client's just going to notice that there's that sense of like, okay, whatever that was whatever it was, a sense of confusion, it's release. So then what you're doing is you're going to get the client to step out of that cinema. And this is my style because I like to play with this. Is my style. You can take it or leave it. But I get the client to come out of the cinema, stepping back out of the old cinema where that old movie played, bubble it up, take it up really high, take it higher and higher, take it all the way back on your time stream to even back then, and just completely smash it out of your energy field. Just see it completely clear and transmute in all times, dimensions, and frequencies. Just see it completely smash out that even where you played the old movie can't even be accessed anymore. I've known to do this where it's like take that, bubble it up, and then drop it into a volcano. It's completely gone. Whatever you can do that works for your client in their model of the world to completely smash it out. If you're working with somebody who, I have no idea, likes fishing, then maybe it's something that you just completely resolve in the water and the water heals it. But whatever you want to do, that's just an added thing that I do. So take a deep breath. We can get to the end of that process. The client's sitting there going, okay, wow. You invite the client now to float into the future to a time where previously it would have created an uncomfortable response. And I want you to look at the scene down there and notice how things have changed. You have choice how you respond to things. And because things have changed, this is a good thing for you. And so this is about getting to the end of the response, end of the process, and for the client to recognize that things have changed and like, yeah, okay, I don't know, there's a spider waiting for me at the letterbox, and it's sort of like, okay, thank you, that's interesting, and an invitation for that spider to walk away or move away. On a side note, I find it fascinating that our unconscious mind, if it has a phobia or a fear, that it's like this constant scanning. Okay, I actually give you a client story. I had working with a client who had a phobia of cats. She was constantly scanning on her walk to the train station. Where's the cat? Where's the cat? Where's the cat? Because she was so anxious that a cat could come on her path that she was looking for it. And of course, she could find evidence of it. There's one, there's one, there's one. So she was a hot sweat mess before she even got to work because of this phobia. Now, isn't that interesting that when you're looking for it, you're going to have an evidence of it? And when you do a process like this, the expectation is that you can now just enjoy being in the now moment on your way to work, not looking for the threat, but instead smelling the roses, seeing the blue sky, enjoying that sip of coffee. The focus is very, very different than actually drawing in and attracting more of what you don't want. You can rewrite the script and start to attracting things that you do want. Show up to work, get that promotion, get that financial abundance. Phobias like this can really, really hold people back. So once it's resolved, it is life changing. I'm Claire Chancellor from Be Your Purpose Coaching and Training. I look forward to talking to you soon. Bye, guys.